Welcome to the You First podcast. My name is Mitchell, your host, and today we have a special guest, Josh Dewaard. He is a realtor here in the Des Moines area, and we are happy to have him. We're going to be talking about some real estate topics, as well as some questions that I've been itching to get answered. And let's just kind of jump right into it. So, Josh, first, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good on a nice Friday afternoon. How about you?
Doing pretty good. I wish that it wasn't as cold as it was here in Iowa, but you know, what can you do?
That's the way it goes.
So Josh and I have known each other for a while. Josh is actually the guy who sold me my house, and he also set us up in this lovely office that we have now. And so the first thing that I'd like to talk to you about, Josh, is kind of coming at it from the perspective of a new home buyer, which I myself was just one recently. And as you know more than anybody else, I was ignorant of a lot of things. And, that's one of the benefits of using a realtor, as opposed to trying and doing it all on your own, is that realtors have industry knowledge, expertise. They've done it before. They know what they're doing. And, they can kind of guide you through the process of what's a pretty complex process. So one of the questions that I'd like to start off by asking you is, just in general, from a buyer's perspective, how's the market in Des Moines? And we'll start local, and then we're going to get broader.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great question. And there's a lot of ways you could take that. I think one thing that's important to understand in the real estate industry, we talk about the market being hyper-local, which basically means it varies from neighborhood to neighborhood, and then it also varies within price points. So it's sometimes hard to make general statements about the market and take those as like gospel truth. But for the most part, at least in the Des Moines area, and this is, I would say, probably true most places nationally from just the few things that I've seen, housing inventory is low, which basically means there's not a ton of homes for sale compared to what a standard market looks like. And what that does is that increases the demand. It's a supply and demand type of thing. When the supply is low, the demand for each home is higher, which starts to inflate the price. And so in the real estate industry, they call that a seller's market, which basically means typically it's more favorable for a seller to sell their home than it is for a buyer to buy a home. Homes are selling for top dollar. Typically, they're selling pretty quickly, and depending on the price point, we're running into multiple offer situations. So kind of what happens is someone puts their home on the market, 4 or 5 buyers flock to it, they all submit an offer, and that home is selling at list price, if not sometimes higher. So when you climb above $300,000 to $350,000 homes, the market starts to balance out a little bit. It becomes a little bit more favorable for buyers, but usually your first-time home buyer is not necessarily looking at a price point that high. So if that's the type of people we're talking about here, I would say expect to find yourself in a seller's market, which means homes are going to sell quick and they're going to sell for top dollar.
So when you say, I'm interested in this, so when you say a seller's market, what you're really referring to is you kind of, as a realtor, you fragment based on price of the home and the various metrics that you use to determine who a home buyer is. So when we were talking, we talked a little while ago about this when I was looking at buying a home, but I was not entering in that $300,000 market. And so, and I imagine that probably a lot of the listeners that are first-time home buyers will probably be entering in at a much lower market. And depending on where you are nationally, your home prices will range a lot. But let's stick here in Des Moines just for a second, because I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on the 200,000 or less market. Where is that market? Is that in a hyperseller market? Or
Yeah.
Where is that?
Yeah, I was actually just looking at some stats the other day, and the months of inventory was under 1 month, which basically that means if there were no new listings that were put on the market, every home, I think it was like 175 to 200,000, would be gone, and they all would have sold in under 1 month, which means like stuff is just flying off the shelves.
And so 1 month in real estate terms, and when you're buying a home, that's a very quick turnaround.
Really
and
quick.
when you say 1 month turnaround, that means from the time that the seller lists the house to the time that a buyer makes an offer, or how is that determined?
Yeah, right. So when you put your home on the market, till the time it goes up pending, so you have an agreed upon purchase price.
And that's when that's when the house then gets taken off of all
Correct.
the listing websites
It goes
or the
listed
MLS
as pending, right? Yep.
Gotcha.
And then we'll close depending on financing. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So, to summarize what you basically just said was that it's a seller's market up to a certain point, at which point the market kind of evens itself out a little bit. So if you're a seller, so let's flip over then. Let's talk about it from the seller's perspective. So, obviously the real estate market is, as you already mentioned, supply and demand. And from a seller's perspective, is that telling you that, if you're considering selling your home, now would be a good time to sell?
Yeah, I would say so. I mean, again, there's a lot of variables in that. Your neighborhood, how long have you lived there, your price point. But generally, this is a good time to be putting your home on the market and selling it. Yeah, it's also a good time to be a new builder. The industry is calling for more inventory. And so, yeah, this is as good time of any.
So let's change topics just a little bit, and stick with the buyer's perspective. What is something that a buyer could do as someone who is just considering starting the process, right? Because the process is a long road.
Yep.
And I know, because I just went through it, that even if you find a house that you like immediately, it's still quite the process. So what is something that a home buyer can do, a new home buyer, first-time home buyer can do to prepare themselves for that journey?
Yeah, that's a good question and an important question. The more prepared you can be on the front end, the easier it is for everybody involved. A couple things that come to mind. The first, really a big thing on the front end, is the financing, right? So how are you going to pay for the house? Most people are using lending institutions. They're getting a mortgage. They don't have the cash to just go out and buy a house. So the first thing that I would recommend is talking to a lender. Even if you don't think you're going to buy for 6 months to a year plus, if you go to a lender today and you let them know, hey, I'm thinking about buying in the next week, I'm thinking about buying 2 years from now, wherever you're at, they're going to be able to look at your financial situation and they're going to say, yeah, you're ready, or no, you're not. And if you're not and you have a good lender, they'll give you some steps of, hey, you need to pay off a little more student loans, you need to pay off some credit card debt, you just bought a new car, you just got a new job, whatever it is, they're going to be able to give you kind of those financial tips that you need to get ready. So that would be the first thing I would do. The second thing, and this is more, I guess if you're looking to buy right away, but especially if you're maybe thinking 6 to a year out, 6 months to a year out, is go drive around some neighborhoods. Start to narrow down the location, especially if you're in the Des Moines metro. There's just a lot of options. We just got done talking about how inventory is low, but there's still a lot of homes you can buy, and there's a lot of different places you can live.
Yeah.
Pictures do a great job of showing the inside of the home, but you're moving into a neighborhood. So if you can drive around and determine, like, yes, we really like this part of town, or we like this suburb, or no, we don't like this one, then when you do get those houses and you start looking at the pictures, you can already write some off. The faster you can narrow down to the specifics of what you want, the easier and the quicker the process goes. So those would be two things I would say.
That's an important point that you bring up that I'd like to dive into just a little bit further. So the qualities that a buyer look for. So from a realtor's perspective, or someone who's more of an advanced buyer, are there any qualities or anything in a house that you see are more like universal? So, like, for instance, you mentioned that the neighborhood, right, is a really important one.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you can think of that, even not so much just a first-time home buyer, but somebody who's an experienced buyer might look for? And thus, if you're an experienced home buyer and you know what you're looking for, that knowledge would be helpful for a first-time home buyer too.
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, obviously the neighborhood location determines a lot of things. But there's a couple things, at least from a realtor's perspective, that I'm looking at. So when you buy a home, it becomes pretty emotional pretty quick. I mean, you're thinking about potentially raising a family there, you're, settling down, whatever, that type of thing. And so it can become sentimental. It can just become emotional.
Sure.
And part of a job as a realtor is to keep in mind that you're buying an asset. And so yes, you want to acknowledge some of that emotional piece, but I always try and think of it as, when we're walking through a home and they're talking about, oh, we can put our dining table here and we can hang this picture here and let's put the entertainment center here. I'm looking at it and I'm saying, okay, 10 years from now when they have 3 kids and they want to resell this, are we going to be able to resell it and get them some good value? So I'm looking at resale value, or trying to anyway. It's hard to project that out very far, but there's 2 things that I'm looking at. And number one, there's kind of just these hard and fast numbers that are the same across whatever house you're looking at. And so, for example, like square footage, there's dollars and cents you can attribute to how many square feet your home has.
Okay.
So the more square feet, the more it's worth, is a general rule of thumb. So there's things like that. The more bathrooms you have, there's dollars and cents you can apply to that. The number of garage stalls, different things like that. How many acres of land on the lot, things like that. Now, where real estate becomes more of an art than a science is when you get into what I've heard referred to as like functionality. So, number of bedrooms, size of kitchen, types of countertops, things like that. You can't really ascribe hard and fast dollars and cents to that, but some homes are more functional than other homes. So, say I have a 1,500 square foot house and it has 5 bedrooms and 3 bathrooms. And I have a 1,500 square foot house and it has 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. Well, it's the same square footage, so the dollars and cents is the same, but potentially for a bigger family, that 5 bedroom, 3 bath is much more functional.
Yeah.
Which in turn would have more value. So it starts to get complex pretty quick, but if you look at the neighborhood you're in and you think about who might be the next person that buys this home and how functional is that going to be for them, those are definitely things to consider. Is it livable, basically? Is this an attractive option that a lot of people are going to want to live in, or is this some one-off home that's built kind of weird, it feels tight and cramped, or you know what I mean? Like there's you can't just look at, I've got this square footage, I've got this many bathrooms, so it's going to sell for this. You got to consider the finishes, all that type of stuff. The whole package. Yep.
The aesthetics as well as the guts of the house.
Exactly. And that gets, then every house is different. That's why it's so hard to pinpoint value, because for one person, it's way more functional than for another person, so they're willing to pay more. And so, so it's not necessarily a guessing game, but I like to call it's more like an art form than it is a science. So
that's a good point. And that goes on to another topic that I'd like to talk to you about, which is how to get the realtor that's best for you. Because there are a lot of realtors, and even if a realtor is a star and great at what they do, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's the right realtor for you. So talk a little. I'd like to hear your thoughts on how a buyer or a seller, really, from either perspective, go about finding the right realtor for them, and what's kind of like the qualities that someone would look for.
Yeah, that's a great question and a really important question. I'm glad that this is being talked about. I'm gonna mess this stat up, and so it's not even gonna probably make a ton of sense. But we were just talking in our office the other day that there was some stat, and they were basically saying that people hardly consider what realtor they're using at all. They don't take much stock in assessing a good one. And I think there's a number of reasons for that. But I think it's really important to pick someone that's good and that's going to do a good job.
Right.
I think it's important for the client or the consumer to know that it's okay, and I think their responsibility to be picky about what realtor they choose. I don't think just someone tells you about someone they know, or you see someone at an open house and you just immediately jump on with them. I think it's important to be discerning about, hey, is this someone I want to have help me through this process? Because the reality is it's more complex than you think. And you're putting quite a bit of trust in this person to represent you. I mean, they are an agent to you. They're representing you. So I think there's some like quick ones that are easy. You want someone who's knowledgeable about the market, that type of thing. You want someone who understands, has some negotiating skills. That stuff's important. But I think more than anything, there's 2 things that come to mind. Number one, you want honesty. So you need you can't have someone who's always going to tell you what you want to hear, because you're just going to find yourself in a bad spot. You need someone who's going to be honest if it's what you don't want to hear, and also to the detriment of their own interests. Because at the end of the day, the realtor is going to get a commission check for your house selling.
Yeah.
Or for you buying a house.
Mm-hmm.
But you as a client, you as a consumer's interests have to take precedent over that. If you have a realtor who doesn't understand that, you need to fire that realtor immediately. So I think that's really important. How you gauge that, I mean, it's hard to quantify that.
Yeah.
People's skills, being around someone, kind of learning their character, that's hard to do right off the bat. The other thing I would say, along with honesty, and it kind of goes hand in hand, is you need a realtor who understands the significance of their role. So when you get into the industry and you start working with a lot of people and doing, deals every month and that type of thing, it's easy for it to start to feel less significant. But you need someone who is committed to remembering that for the client, for the consumer, this is the biggest purchase they're probably ever going to make.
Yeah.
Potentially the only one, if this is the only place they live. So you need a realtor that understands that, hey, I maybe do this every day, but this person, this is a huge deal to them. So I need to be aware of their emotions. I need to be there to educate them on and on down the line. So those two things feel really important to me.
Gotcha. Well, that's it. That's an important point. And what I hear, I think, is there are some quantifying factors you could put to this search for a realtor. But the other thing is that it's kind of a personality thing as well. Like you have to a certain point, the more connection or the more personal you have of a connection or a role that you play, or a role that you have as a realtor, the probably, I'm guessing, the better the experience for everyone will be in the long run. So I'm drawing on my own experience with you, obviously, that just from my personal experience, I'm very much the kind of person that is up at 2 a.m. working on stuff or thinking about things, and I loved the fact that you were so accessible to me that I could shoot you a text if I was thinking about something, if I didn't know something, and I felt confident that you were going to give me not just the right answer, but the right answer, and also the right answer for me, not for you. I never thought for once that you were working for yourself, and I wanna commend you for that, and also recommend that others who are watching or listening deeply consider who it is that you're working with, because, like you said, it is probably the biggest purchase you'll make in your life, unless you obviously sell a house and buy another one. But it's not something to be done lightly, and I just feel like not everybody takes that as seriously as they should. But it is important.
Well, and the reality is what you just said of, you never felt like I was working for myself.
Yeah.
Me working for you, putting your interests first, is a win-win.
Yeah.
Because your interests are put first, you're taken care of, and at the end of the experience, you feel so good about it, you go tell other people, and I get more business.
Right.
So
it's a long-term versus a short-term view. And I think that if you're a good realtor, you probably should have a longer-term view. It's very relationship-based.
Yep.
And we talked about this before, but maybe touch on the difference between like a transactional relationship and a transactional method of conducting business versus a relationship.
Yeah.
Because even for a moving company, right, we are establishing relationships with, realtors, with banks, and it's not transactional. I don't go into a real estate office expecting to get business that day. It's like I'm building a relationship for the long term. That way, 2 years from now, when that person has someone they know that needs a mover, then they'll know who to call. But talk a little bit about it from a real perspective.
That's good. I hope the owner of my company is listening to this, because this is like, he lives this every day. This isn't coming from me. I've adopted it for sure, but his leadership has really brought this on. So the transactional model, and we talk about it in real estate, but it could be applied to moving, any business is whenever you're looking at every person, you're really seeing like a dollar sign over their head.
Yeah.
And you're trying to collect as many of those as you can. So in real estate, it's making touches or calls. It's how many people can I contact, and then it's a numbers game. If I call 100 random people, the statistics show 1 to 3 of them are going to be needing a realtor. And so I'm just going to by mass amount of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's how I'm going to build my business, and it works. I mean, people make a lot of money doing that.
Yeah.
You typically get colder leads. You get people you're not as familiar with,
Mm-hmm.
And it's just a grind, honestly.
Yeah.
There's this kind of relational model, I guess you could call it, where what you do is you focus on referral-based business. And this is the approach that I've taken, is you pretty much spend all your time marketing and networking with people you already know. They call it a sphere of influence. Who do you already know in your life? People you hang out with on the weekends, people you go to church with, family, friends, all that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the people you market to. Few of them start to work with you.
Yeah.
And you do such a good job with them, and you tell them, and I told you this when I started working with you,
mm-hmm.
my hope at the end of this process is you will think I've done such a good job that you will go tell your friends when they need a home, I know your guy.
Right.
And that's been true. I mean, I'm working with one of your friends right now.
Yep.
And the thought process behind that model is, first of all, I am working with people I already know.
Mm-hmm.
Two, the people working with me theoretically already know me or know a connecting person, you.
Right.
Makes it much more familiar. That trust is already established.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you do the transactional model and you're calling 100 people a day or whatever, that never stops. I mean, you're always going to be doing that. With me, in theory, over the years, as I build up a referral-based business,
mm-hmm.
people are just going to be sending me business, and I'm not even really going to have to go out and beg for it or market for it super hard.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it feels better when it feels really salesy and transactional. People just don't like that. The consumer doesn't like that and doesn't want it. No, especially people our age. Right. They don't want random people calling them. They don't want sales pitches.
Yep.
They want quality service.
Sure.
And so if you can deliver that, people are going to choose that every time.
And I think that's an interesting point because, I feel like at some level that might be somewhat of a Midwestern thing.
Yeah.
I feel like the coast maybe, and coast people, if you're listening, don't come after me for this, but some people might be a little bit more transactional based there, but especially like in the Midwest, that just seems like we are a much more relationship based region, I guess. So one other question. So something that was mentioned was compensation earlier when you were talking about a realtor is going to get paid regardless. This is something that's I think it's a huge misnomer, or people don't understand how it works. But can you talk a little bit about how realtors are paid from both buy and sell side? Mm-hmm. Because it's something that I didn't know going into it, and I feel like a lot of people don't understand how it works.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that. In the questions you sent over, one of them, I think it was the last question.
Yeah.
If anything people should know. I wrote that down in my notes. I was going to talk about that. So I'm glad we're addressing that. So this varies across the country what the percentage is, but we'll just stick with the Des Moines market.
Okay.
Typically, when you list your home, so when you go to sell your home, you are going to pay 6% of the purchase price. So we'll stick $100,000 to keep it easy. You are going to pay $6,000. My math right on that.
Yep.
Out of your pocket as the seller. Now that 6% is going to be split 50-50, 3% between both realtors involved in the transaction. So when you go to sell your home, you hire a realtor.
Yep.
You agree to pay them 6%.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. and Mrs. Buyer come along, and they have their own realtor. Mm-hmm. And they show up, and they look at your house, and they say, we want to put an offer on it. So we got the home seller and their realtor. We got the home buyer and their realtor.
Mm-hmm.
The home seller is going to pay both realtors 3%.
Mm-hmm.
There's a whole bunch of articles and stuff of why that is. Mostly it's because the home buyers, they have a lot of front end costs already with a down payment and with lending costs and things like that. If on top of it they also had to pay a realtor, it just would be too much.
Yeah.
And the seller theoretically is making money on their property, and
mm-hmm.
I guess that's just the way it's been. I haven't been in the industry long enough to know anything different. But the important thing to know about that is if you're a home buyer, most of the time, the vast majority of the time, it's free for you to use a realtor. And so then it's kind of a no-brainer.
Yeah.
If it's free, why would I not want a professional
right.
representing me who does this every day?
Right.
And like you said, there's a lot of people who don't know that, which, you don't blame them. Like, why would they know that if they're not in the industry? But it's pretty significant because you see a lot of people who show up at an open house or whatever and they don't have a realtor and they're just kind of mindlessly doing their thing, and it's like, if it's free,
right,
do it. Yeah.
Well, and I think that goes to an important point, which is your value is much more than just the transaction at the end. Like, if somebody who hasn't, for anybody out there who hasn't bought a home yet, or is, just now starting this process, your realtor, depending on how good they are and what their philosophy is, may be pretty involved and may be able to assist in much more than just the end transaction. You organized a lot of stuff for me. You helped me with getting what's a concept where you get local homes that are similar to yours? What's that idea?
Comparable properties.
Comparable properties.
Yeah.
You helped me put together comparable properties so that I made a better decision on price. And obviously you helped me with the offer. You helped me with getting all of my utilities and all that kind of stuff set up and everything. So a good realtor is going to be pretty involved. And, that all comes at a cost basically that's footed by the seller. So
yeah, totally. Well, and another thing that I think a realtor, a big part of their job, because a lot of people think, oh, it's just negotiating the price point. And then people will say, well, I'm a good negotiator. I don't, whatever. But, like you said, there's the inspection period. There's comparable properties that the general public doesn't have easy access to, utility transfer, working with the lender, all that stuff. But the other thing that I think is really important is educating people on home ownership. Because at the end of the day, when a client is done working with me, I hope they feel confident as a homeowner, understanding with the inspection process, here's some things going on in your house with, when it comes to buying and selling, I know more, but I also now have a very clear person I can go to if I have questions. So I think that education piece is pretty important too.
Absolutely. Yeah, I myself personally thought of you as like a teacher. Like I was learning as I went, and you have to, especially as a first-time home buyer, you have to understand that you don't know everything, and not even your experienced realtor will know everything, but they're much more equipped to answer the questions that you can't. And Google, although Google is great and your friend, it also isn't the end-all be-all, and there is a level of experience that, you just what you're doing versus me just trying to figure it out on my own. I probably would have missed stuff.
Yep, exactly.
So it's important.
That another one of these questions of what do you say to home buyers? I want to comment on that because what you're saying speaks right to it. Is I don't know where this comes from, but pretty much every client I've worked with has some sort of embarrassment or they almost think there's some sort of expectation that they're supposed to know stuff about the home buying process. I don't know if that's because we grow up living in homes or what. I don't know why that is, but
I think people don't like to admit what they don't know.
That could be, but something that I try to make very clear is it's okay to not know, and it's okay to ask very basic questions. If you are with a realtor who is not willing to slow down to your pace to understand, you should not be working with that realtor. I think they're doing you a disservice. If you've got someone who is giving you just enough where you're like, oh, I guess I don't fully understand, but I trust them. You should have someone who's walking you through the process to the point where you feel comfortable.
Right.
And so I'm always trying to emphasize that with new clients. Any question you have, ask. Anything, text me, email, whatever. There's no dumb questions. And then, like you said, I'm not this all-knowing realtor encyclopedia.
Right.
There's stuff I don't know. But as a realtor being connected to a community of realtors and a brokerage, I have quicker access to getting the right answers than probably the general public. And so, I think that's important. And it's okay for people to know. Just ask.
Yeah, I think that's an important point because it's something that I even found myself doing, which is I said it a lot, and I know that you'll speak to it, that I said, this may be dumb, but, and then I would ask a question, but you were always so good to respond with, that's not dumb. There's no way that you would know that unless you've done it before.
Exactly.
So I implore people who are considering buying or selling a home, ask questions, because it's better to have the right answer than to try and just swallow your pride. Do swallow your pride. Do not just go about it not having the right answer. Josh, is there anything else that we didn't cover or we didn't talk about that you'd like to mention before we wrap up here?
I think we covered pretty much everything. Yeah.
Good. Well, tell people where they can find you. Tell people, where you work or what you do or how to get a hold of you, because, we're putting this out there for the world to see. So I'd love for people to check you out.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I work here in the Des Moines area for Century 21. We're based out of Ankeny, but I sell in pretty much the whole central Iowa region. If you find this on Facebook or wherever you're listening to the podcast, if you can reach out to Mitch and his company, they can get you in contact with me. Probably my Facebook or Instagram business page, Josh Dewaard Real Estate, is going to be the easiest way to reach me. But yeah, or even if you just Google my name, you can find my phone number. Realtors are super accessible.
Great. Well, want to say thanks for coming out today. We're hoping that we can do this a little more often, and keep talking to realtors, and I'm hoping that the next episode we can do is put together a little bit of a financial learning podcast with a lender here locally. Talk about some basic financial topics. So in the meantime, you first moving. We're based in Des Moines, but we move all over the country. Thanks again.